Vaccine news here this morning. Johnson & Johnson has formally put in its request for emergency use authorization to the Food and Drug Administration for its one-dose vaccine. Our Anjalee Khemlani follows all things vaccine for us. That's pretty much become your beat these days, Anjalee. So how long is this one going to take to get through? And then how much is it going to move the needle in terms of vaccinations?
All very good questions. So let's start out with the filing, which, as we know, is for their one-shot vaccine, and that's going to be a game changer. Of course, right now we know that there is such a logistical issue in just keeping track of the two doses. So they filed for the EUA yesterday, and if we look historically at what has happened for the other two vaccines, the VRBPAC, that Vaccine Advisory Committee by the FDA, the meeting was about 2 weeks out from when they first applied, but Johnson & Johnson is just a little bit further out and could be because their data spans many different countries. Unclear on why it's taking an extra week, but we know that the data set for February 26th. Historically, the FDA approves that authorization the day after the meeting, so we could see by the end of the month that J&J authorized for rollout, and we already know that the company has said they are ready to roll out those vaccines as soon as they get that authorization. In terms of how much it can actually change, though, in the near term, some experts have pointed out that the number of vaccines that will be sent to the U.S. and dispersed through the U.S. is not necessarily as large as say what's already coming in from Pfizer and Moderna. So it will be a while before we really feel that impact. Meanwhile, we already know that the FDA is looking at the strains, and it's important to remember that J&J is one of the first companies to come out with clinical evidence of its vaccine holding up against those strains. Specifically, while it was 72% effective in the US, it did hold up with just a little bit of change in South Africa, as well as Latin America, which we know are core areas where they have two concerning strains that are showing some resistance to the vaccine. But the FDA is already looking at that, trying to figure out guidelines and regulatory flexibility to be able to allow not just the vaccine companies, but also treatments and diagnostic tests to tweak what they can do in order to respond to these emerging strains, knowing that, of course, that UK strain B117 is the most prevalent right now in the US, but we also have those other two concerning ones slowly growing. So everything put together, it's really a race in time between increase in cases potentially from these transmissible strains versus when we can get more people vaccinated. Julie?
Yeah, and as part of that whole conversation, we're talking about boosters and whatnot as well, right? I mean, how quickly, I know you're talking about this whole process of dealing with these variants and figuring out how to address them. I mean, but some of them, they don't even sort of have their arms around yet in sort of in terms of where they are and why they are more transmissible.
That's correct. They are still learning that information, and that's why it's so important. While they are still targeting the spike of the virus, and that's sort of where the response from these vaccines is coming from, they do need to still understand a little bit more about what the characteristics are. They just know that it's more transmissible, but why, or what is the resilience? What fighting against the vaccine does it do to sort of make it weaker? And they also know that some of these strains are already rendering some monoclonal antibody treatments weaker. And so that's where some of this movement comes from, is that they have to sort of, again, just like we were talking about, developing those vaccines while cases were spreading and treatments, we're back sort of again, to the point of comments about 2021 looks a lot like 2020 right now. It's very true when it comes to these strains.
Ooh, no, thank you. All right. Thank you, Anjali. Appreciate it.